Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Interrogation Podcast. Today, with our special guest is a consultant, a coach from the UK. His name is Fionn Patrick, and he's a consultant to business owners, consultants, and coaches. He helps them get more clients without pitching. And that means no speaking on stage, no paid ads, or no podcasting. So it's going to be a real pleasure to pick Finn's brain today. Hi, Finn. How are you doing?
Great, Alan. Thanks so much for a lovely introduction.
Oh, that's a pleasure is all mine, Finn. Well, great to have you on the show. So for people who don't know about you, can you please give a quick intro about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I kind of fell into what I'm doing by accident. I found that by trying to force the way things thought were going to be led to one challenge after another. And perhaps I had to go through those challenges in order to end up where I am now. But I must say that I do feel very kind of happy with where things are currently. And essentially it's, I love doing what I'm doing just now and helping other people transition their skills and make a better difference in the world.
Right. So, can you explain what do you actually help people do actually?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, my kind of handle is that I'm helping, coaches and consultants. I like to say smart people get bigger and better clients without pitching. Now, what that generally means is that don't get so hung up on the sales thing, like, we need to sell stuff. And my approach is a little bit different in that it kind of takes the model of what's otherwise known as consultative selling. And what that means is that you are solving problems and illuminating opportunities to work with other people. So it doesn't mean you need to have specific offers to go into the marketplace. The key thing that you want to do is create conversations with people who you might like to work with. And if you've had some experience as a coach and consultant already, or if you're just getting started, usually you have an idea of the kind of people you would like to start working with, and then that becomes more refined as you go on. So in a nutshell, I help people build their business a lot faster, or their consulting and coaching practices a lot faster, without the needing to build things first. So without having to build a large following, without having to build an audience, without having to build funnels or advertising campaigns, or any of the kind of otherwise expensive things from a time and money point of view. So this is the fastest way. I've done everything. I used to build sales funnels myself and run paid advertising. This is the fastest way I've found to build a coaching or consulting practice, and I share that with my clients.
Okay. And how did you become an entrepreneur? What's the story behind that?
Very good question. So my background is I worked in corporations. So primarily, I suppose you would kind of call them IT or technology corporations. So first one was Dell, and then later Apple. And I kind of hit a bit of a glass ceiling myself in that my brain felt like it was starting to shrink, in that I wasn't being challenged enough, or I couldn't, I didn't have as many options in terms of the challenges that I could choose for myself. I'm the kind of person that gets bored quite quickly of doing the same thing over and over again, and going through the motions isn't something that that motivates me or excites me. So I was really seeking a new start. So I'll try and kind of cut, the last 10 years into as short a story as I can, but what happened from leaving the corporate world, so my background was marketing and operations specifically. And so I jumped into building my own marketing agency because I knew there was a lot of businesses that needed help getting their own campaigns off the ground, perhaps didn't know how to position themselves in the marketplace and get the best bang for their buck and that kind of thing. So that was a kind of low-hanging fruit idea, in that there's always going to be businesses that need help with their marketing. What I very quickly realized was that I didn't enjoy operating the agency model, because essentially you're always going to have those fulfillment and operational bottlenecks that need to be resolved on an ongoing basis. So I turned from being client facing to then being team facing within there. And it meant that I wasn't connecting with new people as often as I wanted to do. So as the business grew, the more unhappier I grew. Okay. And so that kind of forced me to take a sidestep, and I took myself out of fulfillment completely. And I started doing specifically consulting and doing marketing consulting packages for businesses. And I actually enjoyed that so much that I kind of had to take a step back. I realized the whole fulfillment part was the bit that was really draining, and it was hard to maintain the profitability and that kind of thing. So I let go of that part of the business. I sold that part of the business to essentially who was my partner at the time. And I went on consulting and realizing that my time is better spent, one-on-one or training, groups of people on essentially how to. There were two things that happened when I was doing the marketing thing. So the better that our marketing campaigns were, the quicker our clients tapped out and said, "Oh, we can't take any more clients. We don't need your services anymore," which was a terrible model because it meant that the better that we did, the quicker we lost work, essentially. So it's like there was no...
but it's great for your clients.
It's great for the clients, but then you have a high churn rate, right? And it was primarily coaches and consultants that I worked with on a done-for-you basis. The problem was they didn't have the operational aspect to cope with the speed that they were growing at. So we would lose that client, and then they would come back once they lost all their clients and had to fill up again. So it was that kind of, boomer bust style, which was, quite energetically draining. And I wanted to move into something that was a little bit more predictable and sustainable. And so what I do now is more of a done with you type service, in that, through coaching and consulting and even mentoring, I help coaches and consultants build a business model that's going to suit their growth pattern. So regardless of, how much they grow or how many clients they take on, they're not going to be reaching the glass ceilings so quickly and so forth. The business model does change depending on how much revenue you're making and how many clients you're working with. And that's the piece that I kind of work on primarily first with coaches and consultants, because a lot of them aren't sure about business models and how to build it around themselves. And that's when problems start to arise generally. So that's what I'm helping with people with now. And it's been great because I learn so much from my clients. Like, I love working with smart people, and that's the thing is I don't
work with stupid people.
I've never quite put it that way, but more from, I think just from a stimulation point of view, it's like I love working with people. I consider myself the stupid person when I'm working with such smart people, because I'm growing as I'm learning more, and I'm a very kind of learning type individual where I love to learn new things. So I've worked with people in the psychology spaces and well-being, business development, and that kind of thing. And because there's so many different specialities within that, some of it kind of starts to brush off on you. And I'm a bit of a sponge as well. It's like this information that I get that you would never really get from a book or taking a course or anything. So just being around people who are very smart.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is as well is that I think if you can leverage the skills of smart people, obviously they're leveraging my skill, and when it comes to building their own practice, it means that people can get further faster, essentially, rather than trying to do everything themselves, which I think is the curse most experts face.
When I was talking to you, I think it was last week, we had our friendly chat, and you mentioned that you only work with a few clients.
Yeah.
You don't want a lot of clients. What is the reason behind that?
That's a great question. So I do things a little bit differently, and I take great pleasure in being slightly different. And essentially that's a key thing to standing out in the marketplace is how are you different? So the main difference with me is I try and work with fewer clients. So what does fewer clients mean? Well, fewer clients means that I can go deeper with the existing clients that I have, meaning that we can solve bigger problems and we can get, I can move my clients forward a lot faster than if I was trying to build a practice with, 50 to 100 people. Now, I have only 2 team members. So I have generally people who support me in the organization and assisting me with the admin side of my work. But there's only 3 of us really. And so, like I said, with the agency model, I didn't want to start building out a large company and things. I didn't want to be the CEO or the leadership person. I was really, really connected with helping people in a very intimate and deep way. So one of my focuses is to work with fewer clients and get them the best results. Because what that means is that when you're getting better results for your clients, then other people are going to hear about this and want to work with you. And essentially you establish a bit of a waiting list, which is great for the pipeline.
Understand. Right. So let's say, for example, I'm a plumber. I'm a consultant for plumbers and I go to you. How would you sort of help me? I just want to get a general understanding of how would you help a person who approached you?
Of course. Okay. So I haven't worked with a consultant for plumbers yet, but I love challenges. So
just for example.
So let's see how we would do this. All right. So one of the kind of primary things that I help people with first, okay, is that the majority of consultants will work on a face-to-face basis, okay, in that they will work in person. So they'll work locally usually a lot of the time, or they will travel within a specific radius, okay? The first thing that I help people do is essentially bring their expertise online so that essentially you as the plumber consultant can work with plumbers worldwide, okay? So instead of just having the demographic of your town or your city, you're working with plumbers worldwide. So essentially what that means is you have more choice, more variety, and you can also specialize a little bit more as well. Because when you specialize, then it's a specific type of client who's going to benefit from your services, as opposed to just being Alan, the plumber consultant. You're Alan, the specialist in, I'm trying to think of so it might be plumbers who, do
restaurants,
for example. Exactly. So you've got a specific niche, as they say in the US. And when you're a specialist in that space, then basically your work is a lot more valuable, and the skills that you're honing are much more valuable as well. There's an actual value that you can tie to that, as opposed to just being, having a generalist knowledge of the plumbing market.
Okay, very interesting. And okay, at the moment, what sort of projects do you have in the works? I know you've got a few things happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I say, I like challenges. And so often people will come to me and say, can you do it, with this type of expertise or specialist? And the honest answer that I always say to people is, I don't know, but I'd love to find out. So that's brought me to working with, first of all, other marketers and operation style people. So people who are maybe CMOs or COOs before taking their expertise online. That turned into then with CFOs as well. So I helped recently a CFO go from working directly in-house with companies to working remotely with businesses as well. He is one of my success stories. Actually, he got his first consulting client in 3 days, which was great. It's those moments where I'm like, okay, it works for CFOs as well. Let's see, how many other CFOs we can help with this. But generally speaking, like I say, I've worked with a lot of people in the psychology space and generally the kind of well-being space, especially in the corporate world. And these have always been great challenges because I'm not an expert in psychology or well-being in the workplace and that kind of thing. So like I say, I'm always learning new things from my clients. I've even been working with people who are as diverse as they work with horses, for example. So it's called equine assisted learning in the US. And in a nutshell, what that is learning leadership skills through horse activities. Okay, sounds really, really bizarre, doesn't it? But
Bizarre.
it's an amazing niche in the US. So it is quite diverse, like a lot of the projects that I've worked on. And I do seek those because I love the variation, I love the challenge. And these are the challenges that I wouldn't have got working in a corporation.
Mm-hmm. And I also know that you're writing a book.
Yes.
In progress. What's that about?
Okay, great question. So that's called the law of traction. So you may have heard of the law of attraction before.
Sure.
And so the common myth is that with the law of attraction, you might sit down, close your eyes, and wish or want for something to show up in your life. And it might be, the Tesla car or something. And as the kind of myth plays out, it's supposed to show up in your drive at some point through a number of things, a number of happenstance things that happen in your life. And I kind of mock it a little bit there because that's not the true representation of what that is. Okay, so it's not the case that the law of attraction doesn't work, but the reason I'm writing this book is so it's called the law of traction is because once we've kind of set our focus on something that's specific that we want to have in our lives, there are steps that we can take in order to facilitate that. So just to kind of run into the first thing that usually happens when we set a really outlandish goal and wonder to ourselves, does the law of attraction, does it really work? And so the first thing that might happen is, I set the goal, I want the Tesla outside, for example, and then all of a sudden I have this huge problem in my life. It's like something bad happens to me, or I perceive it as bad, and I go, well, that's just my life because the law of attraction won't work for me because only bad things happen to me. And that's where that kind of mentality and mindset stops. Essentially what's happening is there's a challenge that has to be in place in order for you to change and align yourself with the things that you're asking for. So when it comes to wanting things or being able to manifest things in our life, we essentially need to ask ourselves is who do I need to become in order to have those things? And that's a very, very important step because it's not black and white. It's not like, we just switch from one thing to another very quickly. Okay. That's luck, when it comes to things, just expecting things to happen to us. Okay. Because life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. Right. And so the steps that we can take in order to align ourselves with the goals that we want. And essentially what happens is that, so the biggest problem I think that people have is that we don't think we should have any problems, and the key is that problems are actually growth opportunities, right? So when you overcome a problem, you then grow a little bit or you move into a new space. Mm-hmm. And early on in my career, I used to think that if I had problems, then I was doing something wrong, right? If I was doing it right, I wouldn't have any problems. Good job, my business coach at the time completely changed my my kind of cognition around that. In that, when we have problems, it's essentially, like I say, a growth opportunity. And if we are focused on growth and we want to build things, whether it's in our life or our business, if it's a better problem than the last one you've had, it means you've grown. So it's actually, you can use it as a compass, right? Because you're always going to have problems regardless of what level of success you get to, whatever you think success is, whether it's monetary or fulfillment, what you have in your life, there's always going to be problems, or as I like to reframe it, challenges. And it's kind of like a compass that you are doing things right. If you have problems in your life, it's because you're moving, you're changing, and you're developing. And the truth is that when you change things, there's a domino effect, and it can upset something that's been a consistency in your life, and then you need to change that. And through that kind of up-leveling process, that's when we then align to the things that we want in our life, or living life at a level that we previously didn't. So that might be a little bit confusing all in one very, very short time. So I'm writing that out, that process in a book that basically takes us from the concept of wanting more out of life, essentially, to having more in life. Because the key kind of thing is that I'm sure you'd agree with me, Alan, we get out of life what we put in. Would you agree with that?
I think so.
Yeah, I think
Definitely.
so too. Yes, yeah. So there's stages within that as well, because we've got, there's in and out. So then it becomes systematic in process and things. So what I'd like to help people do is map out the process as to, okay, when we change things, it's normal for there's going to be new challenges that come in, and just to embrace them and use that as a sign that things are going to be moving in a different direction. One of the kind of important pieces there is that, and I'm sure you probably experienced this before, Alan, when building your own business and other companies, is that in order to grow, you need to get out of your own comfort zone. So you need to become uncomfortable in order to grow. Okay. So there's kind of a piece in there that once you kind of get used to this feeling, you get consistent with it, is you kind of become comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And that is where you have high performers and people who are wondering, how is it I get to that level? Essentially, high performers are people who are used to taking levels of risk that people who aren't challenging themselves enough are taking. Okay. There's a great quote that I got from somewhere, I can't remember exactly who said it, but it was that profit is derived from risk. So essentially, the more that you can risk in an informed way, then the greater the profitable opportunities are. And I think that's very, very true in that it plays into when you're uncomfortable, that there's an element of risk there, and the level of discomfort is based on the amount of risk that we're willing to take on. Does that make sense, Alan?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Sounds very interesting. When is this book going to be finished?
Great question. So I'm aiming for Easter, and at the moment I'm kind of interviewing a lot of my peers and clients, people that have made a really kind of big impact in my life and the changes that I've made. Because the truth is I would never have got to where I am now without these other smarter people.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of important piece as well, is that when we often try and make things different in our lives, we often go from like, what is it we want, to how do we do it? And we get lost in, oh God, how do we do it? I can't figure it out. Oh, I'm not going to do it anymore because it's too difficult, right? What I've kind of learned is that rather than going from what to how, is to start from what and go to who. Okay, so, okay, I understand what it is that I want, or the goal that is that I want to move towards. Who can help me with that? Or who is it that I can help in order to get what I want, type thing, right? As soon as you start moving your mindset to the who, all of a sudden new relationships and new opportunities, much like our relationship, Alan, where you and I have met over the last kind of 3 or 4 months, those things wouldn't have happened had we not made a series of decisions. Right? And so when you make decisions, you are going to attract the who's into your life and so forth. So I love connecting with new people and finding out what's going on in their lives, what's happening, and if there's opportunities for growth for both of us, whether we can help each other or that kind of thing. Because when that's your focus, then the whole world benefits from it. The ripple effect of that, because when you're both in situations where you can help other people, there is a ripple effect there. And that's really what I love about what I'm doing now.
Oh, Finn, if a new business owner came to you for help, how would you, for example, recommend them do their marketing?
Very good question. So a new business owner, okay? So first of all, what I would do is I would take their address, okay? And I would send them a card like I do to every one of my clients, okay? Send them a card with a special message in it. And I'll tell you what that special message is. It basically says in the front, permission to fail, okay? Because the truth is that
Nice. Right, very nice.
nobody hits a home run the first time. Okay. And often we don't give ourselves the permission to fail, to try. And the truth is in the first stages of any part of business, whether it's marketing or operations or any of that part, you go through a period of validation. Okay. And that's validating your offer, your message, your market, and these pieces. It's very difficult to hit a home run, like I say, the first time you do this. So the first thing that I would do to or do for my new business owner client that you put before me is I'll send them a card or a message saying, you have my complete permission to fail, okay? And I sometimes follow that as well as, regardless of what happens, you are enough. You've always been enough, and you will always be enough, which is something that kind of stuck out for me. It was a Mind Valley thing that I watched a number of years ago from Marissa Peer, because a lot of people are challenged around feeling enough, and that's why they want things, is because they think if they want or they get more things or they have more things, then they'll be enough. And that's when, you know, people upgrade to the Porsche or whatever, and then it's like, oh, I need something else, and then they go and, you know, buy the mansion, and then there's so many stories when people go into that kind of, you know, the more successful they are, the more things they have, right? When the truth is, and I know this firsthand through speaking to peers and clients, is that sometimes they just chuck it all in, they sell it all off, and then they, you know, we'll come back to living what most people would say would be a normal, ordinary life. Because that is a message that comes from within, that not feeling enough for whatever reason that is there. That usually comes from, you know, something somebody said to you at school, or a teacher or a parent, and that kind of thing. If we have that inside of us, then that's not going to help us be the best that we can be. Okay. So I like to kind of solve that situation first to make sure that the business owner feels really comfortable within themselves, and find where their special sauce is, or their superpower. Find out how we can differentiate them in the marketplace and make them stand out next to everybody else. That's the first thing that I would do. And then it kind of ties into who is the best market for this particular style offer, or who are the best people to speak to get information and research back from the market. Because this is a common step that everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people skip, is validation and research. It's not the sexiest part of the situation or the process, but it's the most profitable one, because the better you know your market, the better offers you can make, the better your messaging will be.
Right. Okay, that's
that makes sense, Alan?
Yeah. So the key phrase is permission to fail.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that doesn't include failing to pay Finn's fee. You need to do that first.
That's something that I encourage. I encourage that, yes, and I make it very easy for my clients. And the truth is that you know, when I work with clients, if the match is good, and you know, they get a really good feel for me through the kind of steps that I kind of take them through initially before we start working together, the price is never a problem, because they can see the value that they're going to get in the transformation that's going to happen over the period that we've worked together. So I'll say fortunately that I've really not had a problem with payment fees, but thanks for sticking that in there, Al. I do encourage clients to pay on time, and I am understanding as well. But yeah, nice one.
Finn, what is your typical day look like? I mean, how do you have a ritual, or is it planned? I'm very interested to know about that.
Very, very good question. I'm very curious about this in other people as well, so it's a good one to ask. So I have this kind of thing that if it's not scheduled, then it's not going to happen. Basically, you need to schedule it if it's going to happen, and that means scheduling spontaneous times as well. I'm quite a spontaneous individual, and so I'll actually have times in the day. So it might be like an hour block or something where I go and do something. Like I might, go out and get a coffee, just go outside and get some fresh air and that kind of thing. Because I think often we just schedule work type things. We don't schedule energy replenishment and that kind of thing. So I like to have little breaks throughout the day, depending on where kind of calls land and things like that. And I'll usually have 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon or something where I can, so in the morning, the first thing I like to do is, meditate or do a training so it might be like an online program or something like that, or read a book. Those are the things that I love doing, and get me into the kind of zone consciously, okay? As opposed to what doesn't work for me is showing up and just hitting play and then just going straight into the first situation where I'm kind of firefighting or trying to work out. My responsive state changes if I take some time in the morning to get up, have, I have like, some ginger herbal tea or something like that, and a glass of water, and I might meditate a bit, stretch out a little bit, and just take my time in the morning. Also sitting down, reading a book, like I say, doing an online program or part of that. But I think what's really important is to establish is there's no right or wrong way. So a lot of people kind of listen to how other people do things, and then they try and copy it and go, oh, it didn't work for me, I'm doing something wrong. And the truth is we're all different, okay? We're kind of conditioned to try and be the same. And if we're not the same, then we're doing it wrong type thing. The truth is that we all have our own kind of intrinsic values and intrinsic way of doing things that is the makeup of the brilliance and the genius of what we really are. And a great saying that I love is like, you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, which is often what we try and do when it comes to situations. We try and do, transferred pattern learning in order to judge or assume something. But the truth is that it's more about getting to know yourself as opposed to copying what other people around you are doing. You can definitely take inspiration and influence from other people, but know that just because it works for one person doesn't work for another. And I think that was a very key learning for me, and something I help my clients with.
So how long do you spend working on your business after you do your reading, your meditation?
Yeah. So
how many?
When you say working on my business, you mean working on my business?
Yes.
Not delivering client time, but actually working on the maintenance of my business. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I block off usually an afternoon a week for that. So it's usually a Monday afternoon. And that's really to kind of reconcile, not from a financial point of view, but reconcile what's working and what isn't, essentially. And then implementing systems doesn't necessarily mean systems in terms of, the kind of physical systems, if that makes sense, or the digital systems, but more working on ways of simplifying things. So my kind of keywords that I like to work to is simple and specific. So if there's part of my business that's not kind of flowing as well as I'd like it to be, is like, well, how can we simplify it, or how can we make it more specific? Usually by doing one or the other, like how can we make it more specific? We'll simplify it, essentially. And another question I like to ask myself as well is that how can I make my results inevitable? Okay, so if I've got a specific goal for this month or this quarter, how is it I can structure things in order to make my results inevitable? Because then that way I can reverse engineer things. But short answer to your question, Alan, is usually an afternoon a week is enough to keep on top of things.
Mm-hmm. So how many hours do you spend a day working?
So actual working, I aim for 4 to 5 hours.
4 to 5 hours a day.
Yes, that's right.
You're not the Gary V type, the hustling type, or working till 10 at night.
No. And I tried this before, and it's not in my kind of workflow to be the hustling type. Okay, in the essentially, with a practice, you are your business, right? So the thing is if I struggle, so if that's from an energetic point of view, if I start to struggle energetically, then my business will struggle energetically. So it's more valuable to my business for me to have more energy. Okay. what I recommend for people, so it's kind of like the force versus power principle, okay? Where rather than focusing on forcing things in a certain way, is I focus on removing friction. So rather than trying to push forward, I try and identify what are the things that are holding me back. Because as soon as I remove them, I don't need to push as hard, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of, I suppose, what comes into context with making results inevitable, is that you're taking out the bottlenecks rather than trying to push your way through them, because that's what Gary Vee says, and we need to, follow Gary Vee. I think Gary Vee is great. I think he's got a lot of kind of great thought-provoking content. It's just his style of doing things doesn't serve me or my clients in the best kind of way.
Yeah. I mean, it works for some people, but it can't work for everyone, right?
Yeah, I think it works to an extent. And I think it depends on what stage you are in business as well. So a lot of the clients I work with are maybe between the ages of 40 and 50. They don't want to hustle 60 hours a week,
Family. Huh?
Or they've got family. And that's the thing as well, is I have a kind of young family as well. So my priorities are, I work to live, not the other way around.
Yes. Yep. Same here.
Love it.
Great. Okay. Where can people find out more about you, Finn?
Great question. So probably the best place to start off with is just look me up on LinkedIn. Just Fionn, spelled Fionn, surname Patrick. Love starting conversations with people on LinkedIn, or alternatively, you can email me at info@FionnPatrick. So again, FIONN, patrick.com. And let me know that you heard me on Alan's show, and I'll thank Alan for the experience and the connection.
Yeah, and that was how I met Finn as well, on LinkedIn. Yeah, he's a really, really smart guy. And thank you, Finn. Thank you for being on the show today. It's been a really, really good pleasure. And I'm sure the listeners got a lot out of what you told us today. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks so much, Alan. Thanks for making me sound smart.
You are smart. Okay, thanks a lot, Finn. Talk later, bro.